Hi, I'm Susan Tierney. This is Scott Horne. We're with the Owner Finance Network, and in today's segment of Ask the Attorney, we are going to talk about lease options.
Okay.
We hear about it all the time.
We
People
do.
are constantly asking, and a lot of people, I think, have the wrong information, and so we're going to set them straight so they can make the right decision.
We'll try.
Okay.
But, you know, first and foremost, it depends what state are they in.
Okay.
I mean, it makes a lot of difference in what their laws say.
Okay.
And I think when you talk about lease options, whether you're buying a property with a lease option or selling it, because it depends, and it's important to know what that is, or are you doing both?
Okay. So for today, we're talking about Texas because that's where we live.
We will, and we'll kind of
Okay.
expand some other states the best we can as well
Okay.
along the way.
Okay. So tell me about lease options and buying a property with a lease option.
Okay. Well, first and foremost, I think it's understanding what is a lease option. Of course, if we're going to buy a home from the seller, taking a lease doesn't create any issues or problems if they have an existing mortgage. It's a lease. It's easy.
Right.
Not only is it a lease, we as an investor who are buying that property, we're not going to be the occupants. So it just makes so many things so much easier for the seller in that situation should there be a default along the way.
Okay.
It makes it easier to entice them to maybe lease the house to you with an option to buy it at a set price because of that. They're not stuck or bound into anything per se. Now,
Okay.
only one problem with that, because most of the time investors who are buying a property in this format, their ultimate goal is to find a consumer who's going to be an occupant, do a lease option with them so that that homeowner or that home buyer eventually gets a new loan that pays me, the investor, money, and I pay the seller. I make the money in the middle. Think of it like a wholesale transaction, wholesaling a contract and flipping it, where the middleman makes the money.
Okay.
Okay? So oftentimes there are two lease options to buy. One where the investor buys it, one where they sell it with a lease with an option to buy.
Okay.
And I say sell, I don't really mean sell, but they're optioning it out to a back-end potential home buyer.
Okay.
My problem with that, though, is, Susan, is they're keeping the seller in the chain of title. It means the seller is still on title. So now that that seller has leased the house to me as an investor, they no longer, they own the house, but it's no longer their homestead. Now in Texas, that's important because we have strong homestead laws, and only a few kind of liens can attach to a homestead along the way. Other states might be very different about that. And so you want to research how liens may affect a seller's homestead or not in that instance. So we've got to overcome these objections a little bit.
Okay.
What I like to do is talk to the seller about foreclosure laws versus landlord-tenant laws. Now, we could take a moment and talk about COVID and how COVID affects, you know, leases and filing foreclosures both as well. Let's not deal with that
We're
right now.
almost over COVID.
Because it's almost over and gone,
Thank
and hopefully
God.
goes away soon.
Yes.
But here in Texas, you know, if you wanted to file an eviction, you've got to send out your proper notice as per your lease. You got to file an eviction in court. It's going to take anywhere from 3 to 4 weeks to get your hearing set up along the way. Here in Texas, with a foreclosure, a 21-day notice is all that is needed. Now, other states might have other problems out there. I don't know what those are, but they could take longer, which is why the lease option might be better for that seller. But if we as an investor are buying a house from a seller, and for some reason we're unable to make our payments, whether it's an option agreement or a mortgage, do we want to get foreclosed on?
No.
No. I don't know anyone that wants to get foreclosed upon. And if I had an arrangement with a seller, maybe I paid him a fee up front, I don't know, I've been paying his payments for a while, and something happens, I can't make payments. If I was in a mortgage with that seller, I'm going to ask to do a deed in lieu of foreclosure. I think it's all about the explanation process and learning how to talk to a seller. And by the way, Susan, sometimes even though you can present things to a seller properly and correctly,
Right.
it doesn't mean they're going to do it. They may still want to do the lease option anyway, and if that's the way to go with it. It's okay. But at the same time, I don't like doing a lease option. I want to get the seller out of the equation. Bad things could happen to them, things could attach to the property. And think about this. If I was to put a house under a lease option with a seller here in Texas, I do a lease option with you, a back-end home buyer, and maybe you have an option to buy the house for 1, 2, 3 years. But what happens if something was to attach to the property? Let's say my seller has an existing mortgage. Let's say an IRS lien attaches. The seller can't afford to pay it. Maybe combined, it's more than what I was buying the house from. Now, I can't honor my agreement with you. Am I in breach of contract? I think the simple answer is yes, because you put up non-refundable earnest money to buy my house at a set price, but now you can't buy it from me because of the liens with the seller. And that kind of passes on through from me to you, and I have a big time problem. I don't like that. And so
it's not good, it's not so good for the buyer.
well, it could hurt the buyer, but us in the middle as the investor, if we get stuck in that scenario, it could mean substantial damages to us that we have to pay. And so I like to try to prevent that whenever possible. Also, I like to inform a seller that when here, at least in Texas, when they're selling me a property, obviously they have very easy foreclosure laws, but if they foreclosed upon me, let's say I had you as a tenant in the property, or maybe I had you as a buyer under a wraparound loan of some sort. By foreclosing on me, that automatically extinguishes your loan, so the seller doesn't have to deal with you. So again, it's knowing how to explain the processes to a seller will help an investor learn how to navigate that front-end transaction properly.
Okay.
You know, sometimes the lease option might be the only way to go. Got it. Other times, buying the home, either subject to the debt or with a seller wraparound mortgage of some type, might be the way to go too. And learning how to navigate it might put you in better control. Because I want to buy that house so I can put my buyer in a mortgage on the back end. So on that segue.
Okay, then selling a property with a lease option. I know that it's good in most states.
It is, as far as I know. No, Texas here has some different requirements. Our property codes, because we border Mexico, is where a lot of this stuff came from, makes it a little bit more difficult. We have a basic rule that a lease with an option to buy, wherein title is not delivered within 180 days, becomes what is called an executory contract or a contract for deed. Now that's not good. We want to avoid that. There are some
That's
other
the
provisions.
180 days?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, there is some things out there that allow us to go up to 3 years. You just have to make sure you follow the property code properly and correctly, understand the risks, and dot your I's and cross your T's. Other states aren't going to have those issues, and it makes it a little bit easier out there. But, you know, I want everybody to just, wherever you are, seek knowledgeable counsel in your state as to what your lease option laws are. Make sure you don't have any roadblocks like we do here in Texas. Now, here in Texas, I said, there's lots of hoops you got to jump through. We got to be careful how we do things along the way.
Okay.
Now, why do I prefer doing an owner finance to a buyer versus a lease option? Well, first off, if you're a tenant, it's harder to get a purchase money mortgage than it is to refinance your property. Why? Well, one, you own the property, right? So that's a positive. Two, you're writing a mortgage check, not a rent check. Even though it might be the same dollar amount, it carries different weight. And as you do that, you're creating what we call a pay history. And a mortgage company likes to see that A, you own the property, B, you're making your payments on time, whether that's recorded or not with the credit unions. They can get copies of your canceled checks, they can get copies of your bank statements. They see what you paid on time, and they create that pay history. And therefore, it's easier for a buyer to refinance a home than to get a purchase money mortgage. So let's go the easier route whenever we can out there. But if I am an investor, maybe I have a short-term deal with my seller where I agreed with my seller I would pay them off in 5 years. I need to make certain that you're going to do the same thing with me, because what if, for some reason, you can't refinance the property? So I like to suggest putting things that I call like a step-up mortgage into the loan. That means maybe in year 1 it's an 8% interest rate. Maybe year 2 it's 9, year 3 it's 10. Maybe in year 4 we go to 11%. Who knows what that might be? But that interest rate goes up, which is creating a situation where either you need to refinance the property, so it builds a fire underneath the residence.
Right.
2, if you can't afford to make the higher payments, you're going to sell the house, or you're going to come back to me, and we're going to work out an arrangement where I get the house back, or maybe I find somebody to step into your shoes to take over, who can eventually pay it off. But it creates some scenarios where, just like the lease option, it allows me to navigate with my home buyer the same, but it also gives my home buyer a better shot at getting a refinance than it does with a purchase money mortgage out there. Again, foreclosing on a home buyer, pretty easy here in Texas still, a little more difficult in other states. So again, they should always consult a knowledgeable attorney in their state about their foreclosure laws, know how long it takes. Make the best decision for them. Again, for me, I like to get the seller out of the equation. I want to give my buyer more ability to refinance and pay me off, and that's my goal. But I want to put in some built-in safeguards along the way, so that if you can't pay me off, at some point your payments are at a point that you can't afford, you're going to walk away and give me the house back, or work with me to sell it to somebody else if we can. And I think understanding some basic premises and lease options helps. There are a lot of national gurus who are really sharp guys and very good at this, who teach people how to do lease options. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that out there. For me, I think the owner finance mechanism is better than lease options for those reasons I enumerated. And so guys, I'm hoping that helps y'all out a little bit in understanding just a little bit of basic detail on lease options.
I just have one more question. Are there any specific forms for this?
Well, as far as I know, the answer is no. You know, normally when you do a lease with an option to buy, it should incorporate 3 documents. One is the lease. That's what dictates your monthly payments. Secondly, is going to be the option agreement. Well, how long is the option for? 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, whatever it might be.
Okay.
Again, whoever's listening to this, our clients need to consult the knowledgeable real estate attorney in their state. The option agreement usually sets up a option fee that may or may not be refundable. And then there's going to be a contract for sale, and that contract dictates the terms of what that future sale will be. So that when either myself as the investor, or in this case you as the back-end home buyer, you'll know that you're buying the house for $100,000. And as per that contract, maybe you agreed to put $5,000 down or $10,000 down on your financing of some type. Maybe I went to my seller with a $90,000 contract along the way, or something different of that nature. But they'd be the same thing flowing the same way between the seller and the investor to the buyer, incorporating a lease, an option agreement, and a contract for sale. Make sense?
Got it.
Okay. So guys, I hope that helps you out understanding lease options. Lease options are going to be different in every state. Always consult a knowledgeable attorney in your state, and think through your transaction as you make decisions. There are some cases where the owner finance mechanism may be the best, but I also understand on a case-by-case basis, the lease option side might be the best as well. Hope that helps you guys out.